Okay, so welcome to yet another revision and exam techniques video. So in this session, what we're looking at is ethical issues and how to deal with ethical issues, ethical threats, professional ethics, and the likes. How do you treat those questions in the exams? So today we're going to look at exactly that. And expressly, we're going to be tackling this question that we looked at in the previous video relating to audit risk. So this video is somewhat a continuation of the same question because it's question one, and question one has got several layers to it. And layer number three, as I at the requirements here, layer number three is discuss 5 ethical threats in the audit of financial statements of Quality Blocks Limited and suggest suitable safeguards that should be put in place. So now we're just continuing. We've got the same scenario, but in the same scenario there's audit risk as well as professional ethics that we need to look at. So if you haven't yet watched the other video that I shared relating to audit risk, you should watch that video, because I won't read the whole scenario again because it's too long and it's quite a tedious read. So now I'm just going to go specifically to those items that relate to ethical principles and ethical threats. So now in this particular question, the requirements is discuss 5 ethical issues in the audit of financial statements of Quality Blocks Limited and suggest suitable safeguards. So now let's begin, right? So the issue that we need to understand here is, what is the question asking us, right? So the question is asking us to discuss, right? So we need to have a vivid understanding of what discuss in this context means. So one, we need to discuss, and then we need to also suggest suitable safeguards for 5 ethical issues that we have discovered in the question. So now in the scenario, if we read through the scenario, we're going to get exposed to certain ethical issues. One thing that you need to understand, these ethical issues, when you identify them, they need to relate to the ethical principles. That's number one. Ethical principles of integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, professional behavior, right, as well as confidentiality. Then the most important aspect is the ethical threats. So when you are learning professional ethics in auditing, the most important, for the most part, the longest part of the topic is the threats, the ethical threats, right? So now these ethical threats, when you identify them, right, then you need to provide safeguards so that you can reduce the threat to an acceptable level, and then the audit can be carried forward and carried on. So now the issue here, we've been told to discuss, right? What does discuss mean? So discuss simply means you identify the ethical issue. You read the scenario and then you identify the ethical issue. And after you identify the ethical issue, you need to now tell the examiner why it is a problem. And when telling the examiner why it is a problem, you need to explain just how it relates to the ethical threats as well as the professional ethics, right? So how does this ethical issue that we have identified in the question, how does it affect the ethical threats, and how does it relate to the professional ethics? That's what discuss means, right? So you need to first identify the ethical issue in the scenario, and then you explain to the examiner how this ethical issue affects the ethical threats and how it relates to the professional ethics. And after you do that, the other part of the question is asking us to provide suitable safeguards. So when you provide suitable for safeguard, it simply means you are suggesting to the examiner what the audit firm needs to do so that they can reduce the risk to a normal or an acceptable level, right? So this ethical issue is going to result in an ethical threat, right? Ethical threat of remember the ethical threats, right? There's the self-interest threat, right? There's the self-review threat. There's the advocacy threat, right? After the advocacy threat, there's also the intimidation threat, right? Then there's also what other threat? The fifth one, yeah, it has gone. Okay, then the fifth one is the familiarity threat. So you've got the self-review, self-interest, advocacy, familiarity threat, and then the fifth one is the intimidation threat. So now the items that we recognize in the scenario, how do they affect these five items identified? So now let's begin. So I identified something like, fortunately, Rose, who was the financial accountant to Quality Blocks Limited, resigned and joined the audit firm as a senior auditor, right? Right? This is one of the issues. So Rose was part of the client's company, right? And then she resigned and then joined the audit firm as a senior auditor. So now, why is this a problem? So this becomes a problem because if this individual is included as part of the audit and assurance team, right, it simply means she might get access to financial statements, right, or she might audit financial statements for which she prepared, right? And what does that mean? That means there's a self-review threat, right? There's a self-review threat if at all Rose is included as part of the audit team. If there's a self-review threat, right, which professional ethic is going to be affected? It's the objectivity. So there won't be objectivity when she's carrying out the audit. Why? Because she's reviewing her own work. And now you need to think of a safeguard. What's the safeguard? The safeguard is we just remove Rose from the audit team, right? So that's just me coming up with these ideas as I'm citing the items. So Quality Blocks requested your firm to assist in recruiting a replacement financial accountant, right? So Rose quit that job, she resigned and then joined the audit firm, and then the client Quality Blocks is asking the audit firm to help with replacing the financial accountant. So now this is an issue, right? Because the audit firm is now playing a managerial role, right? The further or the furthest extent to which the powers of the audit firm in this context go is just providing a list of individuals whom it thinks might take up this role, not selecting the specific individual who needs to take up the role, right? So in that context, then there's a self-review threat. If there's a not self-review, sorry, there's a self-interest threat, because this audit firm is acting as a manager. It's acting as a it's playing a management role, right? Right. So now, what's the safeguard here? The safeguard is the audit firm should only go as further as providing a short list of candidates who need to take up the role, right? And then here there's also this other point, right? There has been no replacement for Rose, and the company requested you to finalize, requested your firm to finalize the preparation of financial statements in readiness for the audit. So now, what's the issue here? The issue is the audit firm is preparing the financial statements, right? And when the audit firm is preparing financial statements, the same audit firm is going to audit these financial statements. There's a self-review threat. Objectivity is going to be affected. And what do? What we need to do is we need different individuals, right, to take up the role of preparing financial statements, or the individuals who prepare financial statements should not be included as part of the audit and assurance team. So now you plan to include Rose in the audit team in view of the relevant experience she has. So now this point is stronger, right, than this point here. So In replacement for this point, we can just go with this one, right? As number, so we've got point number 1. So here we've got the point number 1, then this, right, is point number 2, and then this is point number 3. Okay, so now competition in this industry has increased in the okay, no, so this is not relating to us. We've already this is relating to audit risk. So now which other parts did I see here? You do not expect to have any problems undertaking this audit because of roles who will be part of the audit team, and they acknowledge that you have. Okay, that's not really important. Then the point here is your wife, who is a supplier of cement, is a major supplier of cement to Quality Blocks. So now the issue here, the problem here is my wife. I'm the audit manager, and my wife is supplying cement to this client. Why is this a problem? There's a self-interest threat because somebody who's close to me, an immediate family member who is my wife, is supplying cement to this client, and cement is an important item that is used in the manufacture of blocks. So now my objectivity as the audit manager, when I'm coming up with the audit opinion, might be affected. Why? Because my wife has got an interest in this client that we are dealing with. So now there's a self-interest rate, thus the objectivity, right, will be affected. So now how do we reduce the safeguard? One, right, as the audit manager, I don't need to take part in this audit. We need to engage somebody else to manage this audit. If not that, right, we need a secondary professional accountant to come and review my work, right? If not that, the most important point is my wife is supposed to stop supplying cement to the client if at all this relationship between the audit firm and Quality Blocks is to continue. And me as the audit manager, if I'm to continue with this audit engagement, my wife should stop supplying cement to the audit firm, right? And the other point is there's another point I saw. So the directors of Quality Blocks would like the audit to be complete 3 weeks before the planned date, right? So this also can be an issue, right? Why is it an issue? Because this director is, he's trying to tell us the period in which we should finish or complete the audit. This is a problem because sometimes the audit takes long, right? And for the audit to be carried out as it should be, or for the right data, the right information to be collected, it might take a longer period of time. And if this director is requesting the audit to be done 3 weeks before the planned date, it simply means there's an undue influence, right? There's an undue pressure. So now, which ethical threat is being affected here, right? Which we need to think in those terms. Which ethical threat is being affected, right? So we can say there's maybe some form of intimidation to some extent, but okay, this is not really a very, very strong point, so we don't really need to waste a lot of time there. So now the directors offered to pay allowances to the audit team members for working late, and that if the audit is completed in time, all audit team members would be sponsored for dinner, right? So audit team members, right? So audit team members will be paid allowances, and then they'll be sponsored to a dinner at a leading hotel. So now, what's the issue here? The issue here is that's a gift, right? It's a gift for working according to what the audit, or rather what the director of Quality Blocks wants. So the director of Quality Blocks wants the audit to be completed 3 weeks before the planned date. But if that is achieved, the director is going to provide, right? The directors are going to provide an incentive, which is some sort of a gift, right? And that gift becomes problematic if it is material. If it is immaterial and inconsequential, then it simply means that gift can be accepted, right? Objectivity will not be affected. But if it's material, if they're being given large amounts of money, it simply means the audit team members, right, they are going to compromise objectivity so that they achieve what this director wants. And for them to achieve that which the director wants, right, they need to go against, right, the professional ethic of objectivity, right? And simply means there's a threat that we can say there's an self-interest threat. That self-interest threat, they'll be given a gift, and when they're given the gift, right, it simply means prior to that gift being given, the objectivity of those those audit team members is going to be affected, right? So now that is how you respond to the questions, right? So when they say discuss, you need to identify. When you identify the items in the scenario, after identifying the items in the scenario, and then you need to think in terms of how do these items affect the ethical threat, which ethical threat is being affected in this context. And then when you explain, okay, the ethical threat which is being affected is this, right? Which professional ethic is being affected? For the most part, when you're looking at ethical threats, right, and professional ethics, it's the professional ethic of objectivity. So objectivity, for the most part, is what is affected, even in integrity to some extent, right? But for the most part, it's objectivity. But please, whenever you're responding to the questions, you need to make sure you are touching on the ethical threat which is being affected. Point number 2, the professional ethic which is being affected, right? When you identify the ethical issues in the scenario, and when you are explaining, I'll emphasize, when you are explaining, you need to make sure you touch on the ethical threat which is being compromised, and then the professional ethics which are being affected. For the most part, it's objectivity and what? Integrity. For the most part, I will emphasize it's objectivity, but you need to read the scenario, right, and just think in terms of what might go wrong. Right, so now let me just type out some of the responses so that I can be able to show you how you do it in the exam. So let me open my Word. Okay, so here I'm in my Microsoft Word, and I've taken some of the ethical threats or ethical issues that we identified in the scenario, right? I've brought them here, and I've typed an explanation or a discussion on why those items are a problem, and I've also provided the safeguard consistent with the question. So the first thing that we identified is request to assist in recruiting a replacement financial accountant, right? So why is this a problem? So this is how you respond. You say the audit firm will play a managerial role by accepting this responsibility, and thus there will be a self-interest threat which will affect the objectivity of performing the audit, because it will play a role in employing an individual who will prepare financial statements which it will later audit. So now what I've done here, I've explained, right, why this is a problem, why accepting a request to prepare the financial statements, right, or rather why recruiting a financial accountant is a problem. I've explained, right? And point number 2, how does it affect the ethical threats? So there'll be a self-interest threat. So now, which professional ethic is going to be affected? There's a professional ethic of objectivity is going to be affected. And I explain why this is going to be so, because employing an individual, right, who's going to prepare financial statements, which it is later going to review, it's going to arise into all these problems. So now, what's the safeguard? The safeguard is the audit firm should only go as further as providing a short list of candidates whom it is confident can perform the job, and quality blocks should decide the best candidate to employ. So the audit firm should just provide a list of individuals, and then the company, the quality blocks, chooses the individual who's best suited for the job. And that way, the ethical issue or ethical threat could have been reduced. Then, point number 2, request to finalize the preparation of financial statements. Why is this a problem? If the audit firm accepts the request to finalize the preparation of financial statements, which it will subsequently audit, there will be a self-review threat which will greatly affect the objectivity of the audit team members if the same individuals perform the twofold tasks. So now, if the audit firm accepts this request, right, it performs the task, right? And the same individuals who prepare the financial statements, the same individuals come and audit those financial statements. It simply means there'll be a self-review threat. And when there's a self-review threat, right, what is going to happen? Objectivity is going to be affected, right? The same individuals are carrying out they're reviewing their own prior work, and objectivity is going to be greatly affected. What safeguard can we put in place? Right? The safeguard that can be put in place is to appoint a different group of accountants from within the audit firm to carry out the preparation of financial statements other than those part of the audit team. So the only issue here is we need to separate the tasks. Those individuals who are not part of the audit team should perform the act of preparing financial statements. And those that are part of the audit team, right, should be a different set of individuals. Then point number 3, including roles as part of the audit team. Why is this a problem? This is a problem because being the former accountant of quality blocks, it is highly likely that she will review and assess her own prior work, meaning her objectivity to perform the audit with professional competence and due care will be overridden, right? That way we've explained, right, to the examiner why this is a problem. Why it's a problem? Because she's going to review her own work, and when she reviews her own work, there's a chance that her objectivity to perform the audit, right, with professional competence and due care is going to be overridden. Then safeguards. Roles must not be included as part of the audit team going to audit the financial statements of quality blocks. So now, these are just some of the examples that I've given you. With these 3 examples that I've given you, I've painted a vivid picture of how you're supposed to respond to these ethical issues, right? When they say discuss simply means you need to identify the ethical issue, and then you explain why it is a problem, right? And then obviously you need to provide a safeguard. When you do that, then you're going to make sure you have all the maximum marks, right? So with that said, our lesson on professional ethics has come to an end. Thank you.